What happens when Hollywood's most outspoken actor sits down with daytime television's most controversial host? The answer might shock you. Before we dive into this explosive confrontation that had producers scrambling and security on high alert, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think really caused Joy Behar to storm off set. Trust me, you won't see this coming. The View's studio felt different that morning. There was an electric tension in the air as Mark Wahlberg settled into the guest chair, his usual confident demeanor intact despite the early morning hour. Joy Behar, never one to shy away from controversy, had that familiar glint in her eye that regular viewers knew meant trouble was brewing. "So, Mark," Joy began, leaning forward with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Let's talk about your latest project. Another tough guy role. I see. Don't you ever get tired of playing the same character over and over again?" Mark shifted slightly in his seat, his jaw tightening just enough for the cameras to catch. "Well, Joy, I think if you actually watched my films instead of just reading the headlines, you'd see there's a lot more depth there than you're giving credit for." The other hosts exchanged glances. This wasn't the usual playful banter they were expecting. "Oh, I watch plenty of movies, Mark. But let's be honest here. You've built a career on essentially playing Mark Wahlberg in different costumes. The angry Boston guy with a heart of gold. It's like watching the same performance on repeat." The audience fell silent. Even Whoopi looked uncomfortable as she tried to jump in. "Well, I think what Joy is trying to say. No, let Joy finish," Mark interrupted, his voice taking on that edge that had made him famous in his younger days. "I'd love to hear more of her expert film analysis." Joy's eyebrows shot up. She wasn't used to guests pushing back this hard, especially not on her own show. "Expert analysis? Mark, you don't need to be a film critic to see patterns. You've been playing variations of the same character for 20 years. The troubled guy from the neighborhood who makes good. It's your entire brand." "My brand?" Mark's voice rose slightly, and the camera operators instinctively zoomed in tighter. "You want to talk about brand, Joy? Let's talk about yours. How long have you been playing the same character? The bitter comedian who tears down successful people because it gets laughs from an audience that feels better when others get knocked down a peg." The studio went dead quiet. Producers in the control room were frantically gesturing, but neither Joy nor Mark seemed to notice. Joy's face flushed red, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Excuse me? Did you just call me bitter? On my own show? I called it like I see it. You've made a career out of cheap shots and easy targets. When's the last time you actually built something, instead of just tearing it down?" Sonny tried to intervene. "Maybe we should take a different direction here." But Joy was already on her feet, her voice rising to match Mark's intensity. "You want to talk about building things? I've been in this business longer than you've been sober, Mark. I've built a career on speaking truth to power, not just flexing and posing for the camera." Mark stood up slowly, his height advantage suddenly very apparent. "Speaking truth? Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm standing, this looks like someone who's lost relevance trying to create drama for ratings." The camera caught everything in perfect detail. Joy's hands were shaking slightly. Whether from anger or adrenaline was unclear. The other hosts sat frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let the confrontation play out. "Lost relevance?" Joy's voice cracked slightly. "I've been speaking my mind on television since before you figured out how to string together a coherent sentence without a script. Don't you dare lecture me about relevance." Mark took a step closer, not threateningly, but with the kind of intensity that filled the room. "Then, start acting like it. Stop going for the easy laughs and actually engage with your guests, instead of ambushing them with prepared gotcha moments." Ambushing? You knew exactly what show you were coming on. If you can't handle a little pushback, maybe you should stick to action movies where the dialogue is simple enough for you to handle. The insult hung in the air like a slap. Mark's face went completely stone cold. A look that anyone who had seen his dramatic work would recognize immediately. Simple dialogue? That's rich coming from someone whose biggest contribution to comedy was standing next to funnier people and hoping some of it rubbed off. Joy's mouth fell open. In 30 years of television, she had never been spoken to like this on camera. The audience was completely silent, some looking genuinely uncomfortable as they watched what was clearly becoming more than just television drama. "How dare you?" Joy whispered, her voice shaking with fury. "How dare you come on my show and disrespect me like this?" "Your show?" Mark shot back. "Last time I checked, this was called The View, not the Joy Behar Hour. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you've forgotten that other people are supposed to have opinions too." The control room was in chaos. Directors were shouting into headsets, trying to figure out whether to cut to commercial or let the confrontation continue. The other hosts looked like they were watching a car accident in slow motion. Joy was pacing now, her hands gesticulating wildly as her voice reached a pitch that made the audio technicians wince. "You think you can come in here and humiliate me? You think because you've got a few good movies under your belt that gives you the right to attack me personally? Attack you? I'm responding to you attacking me. You started this the moment I sat down with your little prepared speech about my career. But the difference is, I'm not hiding behind comedy. I'm telling you exactly what I think. What you think? What you think doesn't matter to me, Mark. You're a guest on my show, and you will show me respect." Mark laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Respect is earned, Joy. And right now, you're not earning it. You're demanding it like some kind of queen bee who thinks she's untouchable." The tension in the room was so thick it was almost visible. Security had started moving closer to the set, though they weren't sure what exactly they were preparing for. The audience was completely silent, except for a few nervous coughs and the sound of people shifting in their seats. Joy stopped pacing and turned to face Mark directly, her eyes blazing with an intensity that made even the seasoned camera crew take notice. "Untouchable? You want to see untouchable? I've been doing television since you were still running around Boston getting arrested. I've survived network changes, co-host drama, and everything else this business could throw at me. I don't need some reformed troublemaker telling me how to do my job." Mark's expression hardened further. If that was even possible. Reformed troublemaker? There it is. You can't argue with what I'm saying, so you go straight for the personal attacks. Bring up my past because that's all you've got. Your past is part of who you are, Mark. You can't just pretend those years didn't happen because you've cleaned up your image for Hollywood. I'm not pretending anything. I own my mistakes. But at least I learned from them. You're still making the same ones you were making 20 years ago. Still going for the cheap shot instead of having an actual conversation. Whoopi finally found her voice and tried desperately to regain control. "No," Joy cut her off sharply, never taking her eyes off Mark. "I want to hear more about how I'm doing my job wrong, from someone who thinks acting tough makes him an expert on everything." Mark shook his head, a bitter smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Acting tough? Joy, you have no idea what tough actually is. Tough isn't sitting behind a desk taking shots at people. Tough is owning your mistakes, learning from them, and trying to be better. Something you clearly know nothing about." The other hosts were completely frozen now. Sunny had her mouth slightly open, clearly wanting to speak but having no idea what to say. Sarah looked like she was considering hiding under the desk. Joy's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper again. "Don't you dare lecture me about being better. I've spent my entire career fighting for what's right. Speaking up for people who don't have a voice. What have you done? Besides make action movies and pretend to be deep in interviews. Pretend to be deep?" Mark stepped closer again, his voice rising. "I've put my money where my mouth is. I've created jobs, supported charities, helped kids in my old neighborhood. What have you done besides?" Complain about people who are actually making a difference. Making a difference? You make movies, Mark. You're not curing cancer. You're not saving the world. You're an entertainer who's gotten way too comfortable believing his own hype. The audience was completely captivated now, some leaning forward in their seats as if they were watching a boxing match instead of a daytime talk show. The camera operators were having a field day, cutting between close-ups of both faces as the argument intensified. Mark's laugh was harsh and cold. Believing my own hype? That's perfect, coming from someone who thinks being loud equals being right. You don't want conversation, Joy. You want submission. You want guests to come on here and nod along while you deliver your prepared talking points. My prepared talking points? At least I do my homework. At least I come prepared instead of just winging it, and hoping my charm will carry me through. Charm? Mark's voice was incredulous now. Is that what you think this is about? Charm? This is about respect. Joy. Something you clearly don't understand. You think because you've been here longer, you can treat people however you want. Joy was trembling now. Whether from rage or something else entirely was impossible to tell. Treat people however I want. I treat people the way they deserve to be treated. And right now, you're acting like an arrogant has-been who can't handle being challenged. The words hit Mark like a physical blow. His face went completely white, then flushed red. For a moment, it looked like he might actually lose his temper completely. Has-been? His voice was so quiet it was almost a whisper, but the microphones picked up every word. A has-been? Joy. I'm at the top of my career right now. My last 3 movies made more money than your entire network pulls in during a good quarter. But money isn't everything, is it? Because if it was, you'd be treating me with a little more respect. Joy's eyes flashed dangerously. Oh, now we're talking about money? How very Hollywood of you. Reduce everything to box office numbers because that's the only way you can measure worth. I'm not reducing anything to numbers. I'm pointing out that maybe, just maybe, someone who's having the kind of success I'm having might know something about what works. But you can't hear that because your ego won't let you. My ego? Joy's voice cracked slightly. You want to talk about ego? You're the one who can't handle a simple question about your career choices without turning it into a personal attack. Simple question. Joy, you didn't ask me a question. You delivered a prepared insult, disguised as commentary. There's a difference, and the fact that you can't see it is exactly the problem. Whoopi made another desperate attempt to intervene. Maybe we should take a commercial break and... No. Both Joy and Mark said it simultaneously, their voices overlapping in a moment that would have been funny under any other circumstances. Joy continued, her voice rising again. I want to finish this conversation. I want America to see exactly what kind of person Mark Wahlberg really is when he doesn't get his way. Mark stared at her for a long moment, his expression shifting from anger to something that looked almost like pity. Joy, everyone can see exactly what kind of person you really are. You're a bully who's gotten so comfortable in your position that you've forgotten how to have an actual conversation. You've forgotten how to listen. A bully? Joy's voice rose to a near shriek. Did you just call me a bully? On my own show? In front of my own audience? Yes, I did. Because that's what this is. You invited me here. Not to have a conversation, but to tear me down for entertainment. And when I pushed back, you got angry because no one's supposed to fight back. Well, guess what? I'm fighting back. The studio fell completely silent, except for the hum of the cameras and the barely audible whispers of the production crew. Joy was standing perfectly still now, staring at Mark with an expression that was part fury, part shock, part something else entirely. You have no idea who you're dealing with, she said finally, her voice eerily calm. Mark met her stare without flinching. Actually, I think I have a pretty good idea. The question is, do you? The standoff stretched for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only seconds. Joy's breathing was visible now, her chest rising and falling as she processed what Mark had just said to her. The other hosts looked like they were witnessing something they were never supposed to see, something that went far beyond television drama. You know what your problem is, Mark? Joy's voice was different now, colder and more calculated. You think because you've reinvented yourself from street thug to movie star, that makes you better than everyone else. But I can see right through that act. Mark's expression shifted, the anger giving way to something harder to read. Act? Joy. There's no act here. This is me responding to someone who's been attacking me from the moment I sat down. But if you want to keep talking about acts, let's talk about yours. My act? Yeah, your act. The whole angry truth-teller thing. The fearless comedian who speaks truth to power. But you know what? Real truth-tellers don't punch down. They don't use their platform to humiliate guests. They don't hide behind comedy when they want to be cruel. Joy's face went through a series of expressions, settling finally on something that looked like pure rage. Cruel?